Hello students, welcome to another day of learning English with me, and today we'll be starting with the second chapter of Flamingo Reader. The name of the chapter is The Lost Spring. So we'll quickly start the chapter for you, right? Okay, so The Lost Spring, as I told you, is the second chapter of the Flamingo Reader, and it is about it's about boys, it's about kids, children who are not from very financially stable families and who are poor students, poor kids, not students, poor kids. So they have to work a lot for earning a living for themselves and for their families. So this chapter, it is basically an extract from a book written by a writer called Anees Jung. Okay, she is a very famous writer Anees Jung. She's a very famous writer. She comes from a city called Rourkela. It's somewhere near Odisha, this place, somewhere a few hundred kilometers around away from Odisha. And she received her education from India and abroad. And she's a famous writer, she's a columnist, she's an author. And her parents, as I told you, are also writers. So she comes from a family of writers. And through this chapter, she basically, exposes the life of poverty, of these kids, of these children who have to work very, very hard to earn a living for themselves. They do not go to schools as they cannot afford schooling, or they live, we are talking about underprivileged kids, they can't go to school, they can't afford a good education because they have to go work for themselves and their families, just for, getting the basic means done for their families, they have to work. So we'll quickly start with the chapter. So little bit, I told you about the author. I will also read it for you very quickly once. Anees Jung was born in Rourkela, as I told you, and spent her childhood and adolescence in Hyderabad. She received her education in Hyderabad and in the United States of America. Her parents were both writers. Now, we do not need to learn all these things. Nobody is going to ask these things. But, if any question comes from the chapter, which is a long answer, so it always gives you extra points if you talk in a line or two about the author, right? So her parents were both writers. Anees Jung began her career as a writer in India. She has been an editor and columnist for major newspapers in India and abroad. You don't need to remember it. And has authored several books. The following is an excerpt. As I told you, it's an extract. It is an excerpt from her book titled The Lost Spring, Stories of Stolen Childhood. Here she analyzes the grinding poverty. Now, grinding means oppressive, OTT, over the top, you can say, okay? So too much, grinding, oppressive, non-ending, unending, okay? So here she analyzes the grinding poverty and traditions which condemn these children to a life of exploitation. These children, they have to work so hard, they are under this perpetual state of poverty, and they are basically condemned, they are basically punished, condemned to be in this state throughout, and they cannot have basic things like education, as I told you. So grinding, we know, means oppressive and non-ending. Poverty, condemn means punish or force. You don't need to remember this. The Lost Spring analyzes the poverty and pitiable condition of street children who are forced into labor early in life, okay? Who are forced into a life of exploitation and are denied the opportunity of schooling. So they have to work from the very advent of their life. जब वो छोटे एज के होते हैं तब से ही उनको काम करना पड़ता है. That is what I mean to say. And they lead a life of exploitation, right? And are denied the opportunity of schooling. Of course, they can't afford to go to school and they have to rather work. So how would they go to school? Okay. The call of Anees. Now, call of Anees basically means that through this chapter, through this extract of the, her writing, she is calling upon the audiences that, okay, listen to my story and come on, do something about these poor kids. They also deserve a beautiful life. The lost spring. Spring is a beautiful season. So spring depicts all positivity. So what she tries to tell you here is that the lives of these kids, the lives of these children have lost the spring, have lost the joyfulness and happiness. So let's do something and get it back for them. So the call of Anees is to end child exploitation and let children enjoy the joyful days of spring which seem to have lost somewhere, right? I hope it's clear. Okay, so we will start with the first part of the story today. So sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. Now basically, you know, what happens is that we are talking about an area called Seemapuri. Now I come from Delhi. So I basically know Seemapuri is kind of a low-lying kind of an area around Delhi, on the outskirts of Delhi, where, you know, rag pickers lives and, you know, illegal immigrants, you know, who have come, poor people, they live in very shabby kind of dwellings, small dwellings, that lack proper hygiene and sanitation. So it's basically a, you know, a portion of Seemapuri is basically a dump yard of, you know, of trash, I can basically say. Okay, so that is the area we are basically talking about in this story. So right now, you know, it's like Anees Jung, she looks at a boy called Saheb, who is a rag picker. Initially, towards the starting of the chapter, she does not know the name of that boy, but she keeps on seeing him quite frequently. So one fine day, she stops him and questions him. Okay, so let's see how it starts. Why do you do this? I asked Saheb, whom I encounter every morning, scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. So why do you do this is a question towards the starting or the advent of the chapter. You know, the starting line of the chapter goes with a question which Anees Jung, that is the author, asks a rag picker boy called Saheb. And at the moment, she doesn't know that the name is Saheb. Okay. So, why do you do this? She asks him. Why do you do what? I ask Saheb, whom I encounter every morning scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. Now, basically, you know, every morning, Anees Jung notices that this boy, his name is Saheb, but she does not know the name at present. Okay. So this boy Saheb, she encounters him every morning scrounging. Scrounging means literally searching, you know, for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. Now, why this imagery of searching for or scrounging for gold? Do people throw gold in garbage? No, it's not like that. But, you know, this is just, you know, a way to create an interest of readers. It's an ironical statement over here. Scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps basically doesn't mean that they used to look and wait for gold coins and gold necklaces and gold pieces, nothing like that. But the way in which Saheb used to literally search for that thing, you know, putting all the garbage aside and literally, you know, searching for it, scrounging for it, that manner, you know, it was as if, you know, he's looking for something as wealthy, as expensive as gold. That is the basic idea. So not exactly literally looking for gold, but, you know, looking for something important in the garbage dumps, right? So I asked Saheb, whom I encounter. So she used to see Saheb every morning, you know, literally searching for something in the garbage dumps of her neighborhood. Saheb, now she is giving you a detail about Saheb, which of course Saheb must have told to her after constant interaction. So, Saheb left his home long ago. Now, this is Saheb's story. So, he left. He does not belong to this area of Seemapuri, but he belongs to Dhaka, and he left his home long ago. His home means his beautiful, lush, green forests of Dhaka, where his home was. Okay. So, Saheb left his home long ago. Set amidst the green fields of Dhaka, his home is not even a distant memory. Now, many years, you know, many years have passed since he came with his family in Seemapuri from Dhaka. So now, you know, his home is not even a distant memory for him. He doesn't remember anything about it. All he remembers is what his mother, you know, keeps on telling him that, okay, Dhaka used to be such a place, such beautiful lush green forests, lush green areas we used to live in. And then, you know, this and this happened. There were many storms that swept away their fields and homes. His mother tells him. So that, as I told you, his mother actually, you know, told him about Dhaka. He has very little memory of it. So he says that his mother told him that there were storms that actually destroyed their fields and homes. So everything got lost. They had no food, no work. So that is why they had to come somewhere else, and they landed in Seemapuri. That's why they left, looking for gold in the big city where he now lives. For poor people, always, capital cities, big cities are like, we will make something after going there. They target it. So that is why these people also came, thinking of not literally getting gold in the big city, but of course getting something more valuable, because over there in Dhaka, nothing was left for them. Okay. Scrounging, I've already explained you the meaning. Searching for. Scrounging is a beautiful word. You should know the meaning. Okay. Scrounging for gold. As I told you, the writer ironically says this because although the garbage dumps are usually full of thrown away and useless things, yet Saheb shuffles it so minutely as if he'll get something as precious as gold in it, as I told you. Right? And they left their home many years ago, and Saheb doesn't remember it anymore, as I told you. And gold here refers to something precious which was not available in hometown. Now, this line will be repeated again and again. Looking for gold, scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps. So, getting gold or getting something from the garbage has different value for the children and for their parents. Of course, I'll tell you as I venture more into the chapter, but just for a small reference, gold, looking for gold or looking for something in the garbage dumps has different parameters for kids and for their parents. Both of them do this work only. They are rag pickers, but they have different parameters, different value. Okay. So, for gold here refers to something precious which was not available in their hometown. And for children, looking into the garbage is, maybe they would get shoes or money. They look for temporary things, things which do not have a lot of meaning. Maybe I will get some money, maybe I will get some shoes, maybe I'll get a bag in the garbage dumps. But for parents, it is not this. It is not luxuries. For parents, it is basic necessities that they keep on hunting in the garbage dumps, because for them, they have no food, no shelter. So that is the most important thing in life. So for parents, it is food, shelter and clothing as means of survival for their families, right? So you can understand that we are actually talking about rag pickers, rag picker boys, rag picker families who are really very, very poor. They can't actually make complete ends meet also for themselves. So we are talking about very poor people right now, right? Through this chapter. Not I'm basically passing over the ideology, but Anees Jung basically is talking about very, very poor people right now. Okay. So I hope you understood garbage dump, and this is not an actual picture of Seemapuri. I have ahead when we go, I have picked up an actual picture also for you. Okay. So you remember the question? The question was, why do you do this? So do what? Anees Jung is asking Saheb, why do you scrounge in the garbage dumps? Why do you do this? This is the question. So as of now, he has not answered the question. Now he will answer the question. So look at his answer to the question. He says, I have nothing else to do. He mutters, looking away. So this is Saheb's answer to Anees Jung's question, right? So he says, I do this. I actually look into the garbage dumps because I have nothing else to do. There's nothing else to do apart from rag picking. So this is what I do. This is what I will be doing. So I have nothing else to do. He mutters. Mutters means speaking in a low voice, not like me, speaking in a low voice. Because I have nothing else to do. Something like this. Okay. So he mutters, looking away. So he's looking somewhere else. Probably he's, wondering about something, thinking about something, and he's just replying to Anees Jung, I'm doing this because I have nothing else to do. Okay. So now she says, see, go to school, I say glibly, realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound. Now, glibly basically means without thinking, you just utter something. You say something with a lot of confidence, but not much of thought goes into it. It happens a lot of times with us. हम कुछ बोल देते हैं and then we repent. Then we regret, अरे ये क्या बोल दिया, सोच समझ के बोलना चाहिए. That is why they always say that before saying anything you must think twice. Okay, so glibly basically means saying something with a lot of confidence but not thinking before saying it. So with with the flow, she just tells him, go to school. You know, if you have nothing else to do, go to school. She should have thought, how would he go to school? He is such a poor fellow. Besides, there is no school around his slummy area. So go to school, I say glibly, realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound. Of course, you all know, but just to mention for the few ones who don't know, I means Anees Jung because she is the writer. So I means her. Okay. So she says, go to school. I say glibly. Glibly means very carelessly without giving it a thought. So go to school. But immediately, you know, as soon as she says it, she realizing immediately how hollow, how shallow, how baseless, you know, how stupid. So how hollow the advice must sound. There is no school in my neighborhood. When they build one, I will go. So of course, that's his reply. Much expected. So he says, there is no school in my neighborhood. When they build one, I will go. Then she says, look at her. If I start a school, will you come? I ask half joking. Now, this is just a joke. Anees Jung is a writer and she had no plans of making a school for him. Not at all. This was nowhere in her line of thinking. But just, you know, just with the flow, jokingly, she just says, okay, now you're saying there's no school. If I build a school for you, will you come? So he says, yes, yes, he says, smiling broadly. So I think it's quite clear, right? So we'll go to the, I've given you the word meanings. Mutters means speaking in a low voice. Glibly means carelessly without thinking, you know, to say something glibly. Glibly is again a very nice word. You can use it for your vocabulary. Hollow, meaningless. So the writer immediately realizes that her advice is meaningless for the poor boy. So I think it's quite interesting and easy till now. Okay, so we'll move ahead. Yes, he says, smiling broadly. Okay, that we've already done. A few days later, I see him running up to me. Is your school ready? Now, Saheb has not forgotten it. He has not forgotten it. So he's just trying to play a little witty. And after a few days, he reaches out to Anees and asks her, oh, you told me about the school. Is it ready? So a few days later, I see him running up to me. Is your school ready? Now, these words are very important. Very important in terms of questions being asked and very important for the general understanding also of the chapter. It takes longer to build a school, I say, embarrassed at having made a promise that was not meant. Now see, of course she has to give a reply. So the reply she gives is that, oh, it takes a lot of time to build up a school. But you know, after replying, along with replying, she feels very embarrassed, very bad about this thing that she made an empty promise, a false promise. She actually did it out of a flow. She was just joking about it. But the boy, you know, he might have taken it seriously. So she feels a little embarrassed at having, you know, at having made a promise of making a school for him. But she had no plans, no ideas of making it. She just said it just for the matter of saying. So she feels awkward and embarrassed about it. So I say embarrassed at having made a promise that was not meant. So she just made an empty promise to him. But promises like mine abound. Abound means there are plenty. Okay, there are lots of them. So, but promises like mine, that means false promises like Anees's. So, promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world. Bleak means depressing, without future. You know, very sad, very depressing. A very effective usage of bleak, which you will always remember, would be if you do not study properly, your future might turn out to be bleak. So sad, depressing future, dark future, right? So that is the word bleak for you. Okay. So Anees is feeling very embarrassed. Anees is feeling very ashamed that she must have not made a false promise or given a false hope to Saheb, right? But for Saheb, he does not get hurt about it because he, you know, he's used to such a life. People treat him like this. People usually treat poor people, poor boys like this. They just take them for granted and they just say anything to them. They just make any kind of false promises to them and do not actually fulfill the promises or fulfill the word. So this is basically what we mean, and this makes for a very important question. So although, you know, Anees Jung felt embarrassed or ashamed about making a false promise to Saheb, But Saheb was not hurt, as he was used to such promises as they existed in large numbers in his empty world. See, such a, bad life, poor life they are living. People just come, make false promises, and they can't even feel hurt about it. Why? Because they are poor, very bad. Okay, he was surrounded by such false promises made by everyone around him. I hope it's clear. Next one. After months of knowing him, I asked his name. Now this one is very funny, okay? So I told you at the advent of the chapter, at the start of the chapter, I told you that till now the author Anees Jung does not know the name, So this is the point in time when she actually gets to know the name of Saheb. So after months of knowing him, I asked him my name. So she asked Saheb his name. So look at the name. This also makes for a very important and interesting question. His name is Saheb-e-Alam. Look at the name. Such an ironical name, such an irony in the name itself. Saheb-e-Alam basically means Lord of the Universe. Some big person, Lord of the Universe. And look at what profession he is into. Such a poor boy, right? So after months of knowing him, I asked him his name. Saheb-e-Alam, he announces. So he announces that my name is Saheb-e-Alam. He does not know what it means. Now, this is a very funny thing. He does not know the meaning of the name. Thank God he does not know the meaning of the name, because had he known the meaning of the name, he would have really looked for a place to hide himself, because his name is totally opposite to the reality of his life. He's nowhere close to the Lord of the Universe, the kind of life he is living of perpetual poverty. Food is also a big problem. Okay, so see. If he knew its meaning, Lord of the Universe, so the meaning of Saheb-e-Alam is Lord of the Universe. So if he knew its meaning, Lord of the Universe, he would have had a hard time believing it, right? Obviously, he would not be able to believe it. Unaware of what his name represents, he roams the streets with his friends, an army of barefoot boys who appear like the morning birds and disappear at noon. Now, Saheb-e-Alam, Saheb is not the only one. There are lots of people in and around the area of Seemapuri who are into this rag picking work. Okay, so he basically had a proper gang. What? Of barefoot boys. So these boys, they could not afford shoes also, so they were mostly barefoot. Shoes ka part abhi aage jaake aayega. Shoes was such a big thing to them. When I read this chapter for the first time, I felt like, I felt really bad. We waste so many things. We are very careless about things. I have so many pairs of shoes. We should not do that. Think of the poor people. We should donate. We should try to, as much as it allows us, we must. Okay, such poor kids, just getting a pair of shoes, damaged shoes also, was such a big thing for them. They used to be happy about mismatched, discolored shoes. Because they always used to walk barefoot here and there. So you'll also eventually feel, because I've already read it, so I have those feelings while discussing it with you. So don't waste things, students. Don't waste things. Okay. So he roams the streets with his friends and army. So it's a full gang, full army that he operates with. And it's a gang of an army of barefoot boys who appear like the morning birds and disappear at noon. Now, basically, this work of rag picking is mostly done in the mornings. After afternoons, this work is not done. In all the areas, mostly, these are the timings for this work. Okay. So, they are like morning birds. Basically, morning birds is conveying the idea of early bird. Morning bird doesn't make pretty much sense. There's nothing like a morning bird. Early bird is there, somebody who wakes up early, right? That's an early bird. So morning bird basically hints the same idea, that these barefoot boys were an army and they appeared like the morning birds, means they basically worked in the mornings, and after afternoons they were nowhere to be seen. So they kind of disappeared because their profession was like this. Okay. Over the months, I have come to recognize each one of them. Now, Anees Jung, must have been interviewing them, talking to them. Yes, of course, she has been talking to them. So, over the months, she actually came to recognize each one of them. Okay, so basically this paragraph is about the name Sahib-e-Alam and Sahib actually not knowing the meaning of his name, Sahib-e-Alam, the Lord of the Universe. So had he known the meaning, he would not have been able to believe it. His name was opposite to his life. I already told you this. Okay. Next one. Why aren't you wearing chappals? I asked one. Now, Anees Jung is talking to these boys. So she points out one boy and she asks him, why aren't you wearing chappals? Why are you barefoot? Why aren't you wearing any footwear? So look at his reply. My mother did not bring them down from the shelf. He answers simply. This is a sheer lie. Because actually he could not afford chappals. He was not having any footwear. But he just wants to make an excuse. He just wants to pretend that, there's no problem as such. So the reply he gives is that my mother did not pick it up from a shelf, and shelf was probably, at a height, and I could not reach the shelf. And my mother did not pick it up and give it to me. So that's why I didn't wear those chappals. So my mother did not bring them down from the shelf. He answers simply. Now the other kid tells this to Anees. Even if she did, he will throw them off. Adds another who's wearing shoes that do not match. So now there's another boy who's wearing a mismatched pair of shoes. His shoes do not match. Probably it's red on one foot and white on the other foot. So his shoes do not match, and he is giving reply for his rag picker friend that even if his mother gave him the slippers, the chappals, he would have thrown them off. He would not have worn them. It's just an excuse they are making. This is not the truth. Okay. So even if she did, he will throw them off, adds another who's wearing shoes that do not match. When I comment on it, when Anees comments on the mismatched shoes to the boy number 2, look at what he does. When I comment on it, he shuffles his feet and says nothing. Shuffles means move a little, and slide them in a way to hide those mismatched shoes from Anees Jung, The moment she points out, he just kind of hides his, he moves his feet and he tries to hide his mismatched pair of shoes. So when she comments on his shoes, his mismatched shoes, probably she would have asked, and what about you? Why are you wearing different color shoes? We must wear a single color shoes. That makes a pair. So, he just gets conscious and he kind of moves his feet in a way thinking that, by moving his feet, Anees would not be able to notice, but she's already noticed. Okay, anybody would notice such a thing. So when I comment on it, he shuffles his feet, means moves them, slide them over each other and says nothing. Now boy number 3, see what he says. I want shoes, says a third boy who has never owned a pair all his life. So this boy says, I want shoes, and he has never been able to own a pair of shoes all his life. That's really tragic and bad. So now Anees says, traveling across the country, like traveling across India, I have seen children walking barefoot in cities on village roads. You also must have seen, there are children who walk barefoot in villages, on roads. We encounter such people, such kids, everywhere. It is not lack of money, but a tradition to stay barefoot is one explanation. Very important. Now, you know what people do? When she used to ask them, when Anees used to ask them, why these people are not wearing, why these kids are not wearing anything in their feet, they might hurt their feet, why they are not wearing. So look at the audacity of some people. They actually used to tell a lie to Anees Jung that it's our tradition to remain barefoot in India. It is actually false. Actually, they could not afford it. That is why. But just, to give her an explanation, and they used to, you know, feel shy by, you know, about telling her that they are really very poor and they could not afford a pair of shoes for their kids. They people just, you know, sometimes used to make explanations to her. But Anees understood this. Okay, so Anees understood it. I wonder if this is only an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. Perpetual means never ending. So Anees realizes, she wonders, she thinks that this is just an excuse, you know, to give an explanation of what? To explain away a constant, a never-ending state of poverty. So Anees realized, she got the point that these people whom I keep on asking, they are just hiding their real state, that they are so poor they cannot do anything about it. Okay, so their reason, these people, you know, whom she used to ask them when she used to see children walking barefoot in cities and on village roads, she must have gone and asked people why this is happening. So they reasoned that they were barefoot not due to lack of money but because of tradition. The writer wondered and concluded, so she got to know that the reason for it being a tradition was a mere excuse to hide away the fact that they were so poor that they could not afford footwear. I think I've made you understand this quite clearly and in depth. Okay, now, you know, Anees is thinking about story of a man from Udupi, So Udupi, please spare the spelling. It is Udipi over there. Okay. Had I not mentioned, you would not have realized, but Udipi. Okay. So now Anees is remembering a story. This story was told to her by a man from Udupi. Udupi is basically, you know, a town in Karnataka. Okay. So I remember a story. As I told you, refers to Anees Jung. So Anees remembers a story. A man from Udupi once told her, as a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. So this is a brief story, a story in story kind of a thing. So she is remembering a story which a man from Udupi once told her. And what was the story? He told her that when he was a young boy, when that man from Udupi who's reciting the story, when he himself was a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple. So he used to go to visit his school, and on the way he used to pass through a temple, and where his father was a priest, and in that temple his father was working as a priest, the Udupi man's father. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. So en route to his school, he used to actually stop by at the temple where his father worked as a priest, and he used to actually pray to the God to grant him a pair of shoes. Can you imagine? Like, have we ever done that? No. So we must think that we are very, very fortunate. Our parents are working so hard for us. We are so fortunate. We have so many luxuries of life. Just imagine a little boy going to a temple and literally praying for a pair of shoes. Just imagine what his condition would be, right? So he would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited his town and the temple. Now, after 30 years, Anees went back to his temple and the town. Of course, those people must not have been there after 30 years. A new priest would have come. A new family would have come. Okay. So 30 years later, I visited his town and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. Drowned in an air of desolation basically means it was completely empty. Now, it was not that populated. It was now empty. Okay. So, desolation in a state of emptiness. So, 30 years later, I visited the town and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. In the backyard, where lived the new priest, there were red and white plastic chairs. Now, she is telling that this time now the priest had changed. So, some other priest used to live. So, she actually visited the backyard of the temple where the priest used to live. The new priest used to live. She remembered that there were red and white plastic chairs. A young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived, panting. Panting, of course, you know, breathless. He would have run back fast from school and threw his school bag on a folding bed. So now she sees that she is seeing the new priest's kid, the new priest's family. So a young boy, he's just coming probably back from school, and he throws his bag and she sees him wearing shoes and socks both, and he's dressed in a grey uniform. So a young boy wearing grey uniform, socks and shoes arrived panting and threw his school bag on the folding bed. So she feels very happy that the state, the condition of the priests and their families have improved. In this effect, the color of the uniform has to be grey. I just picked up this image because I wanted to show these, shoes to you, but the uniform's color is grey. So don't think that it was blue, it was grey uniform. So now the financial position of the priests at the temple had improved over the years. After 30 years, the case was not the same, because this boy, probably the priest's son, not probably, actually the priest's son, he was properly dressed in a school uniform, and shoes were there, socks was there, bag was there. So their financial position had improved. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. Now, looking at this boy, she is remembering another story, another condition in which, a boy, when he had finally got a pair of shoes, maybe he would have also prayed a lot to the god to receive pair of shoes. So when he finally got the pair of shoes, just imagine the prayer he did. This is another boy. This is not the same boy, the Udupi boy, the Udupi man who was narrating the story to Anees that when I was a little kid. This is another boy. Okay. So looking at the boy, looking at the new priest's son, now Anees is remembering the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. What was the prayer? Let me never lose them. Now, God, that I have finally got the pair of shoes, let me not lose them. So just imagine. Let me never lose them. The goddess had granted his prayer. Young boys like the son of the priest now wore shoes, but many others like the rag pickers in my neighborhood remained shoeless. So now Anees is trying to say that the prayer of that little kid, that let me never lose the pair of shoes, that prayer God has granted, because now the financial condition of the priests and their families have improved over there. The financial position has improved, and now they have shoes, their kids have shoes, they are having basic necessities. But she is mentioning, but many others like the rag pickers in my neighborhood remain shoeless. Okay, so initially this used to be the condition. This is the condition of the Seemapuri boys in her neighborhood. This is the condition, the rag pickers condition, and this is the condition of the priest's kids now. Okay. My acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Seemapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it metaphorically. Now, she is trying to give you details about Seemapuri. I told you at the starting of the chapter, the place we are talking about, the area we are talking about is Seemapuri, in which lots of slum dwellers live, lots of rag pickers live. There are heaps of trash over there, garbage heaps over there, very smelly area, and very bad condition, poor condition of people are there in slums. Okay, so my acquaintance basically means a know-how, a contact, somebody who's not a good friend, a deep friend, but you know him, is an acquaintance. That is the noun, as a noun. But here, acquaintance is used not as a noun. So my acquaintance with is my know-how with, my contact with. Okay, like a verb it is used. So my contact with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Seemapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it metaphorically. Very beautiful lines, very deep lines. Now Delhi. is considered to be the national capital, a very hip kind of a place where people have lots of stuff and there's a lot of show off. People have all valuable things. Probably the richest of the people live there. But she is telling you, Anees Jung is telling you that this place called Seemapuri is on the periphery of Delhi. Periphery is basically outskirts or the boundaries of Delhi. Okay, outer area of Delhi. So she is telling that this place Seemapuri is actually very near to Delhi. It's almost a part of Delhi. Okay, so physically, it's so close to Delhi. It's on the periphery. It's on the boundary. It's on the outskirts of Delhi. And Delhi is a place where all the rich people live. But yet miles away from it metaphorically. Metaphorically here means symbolically. Symbolically there is a lot of difference between the lives of people living in Seemapuri and lives of people living in the NCR. So on the map, Seemapuri is on the periphery of Delhi. But symbolically, there is a lot of difference between the lifestyles, the people, the general people of NCR are living and the people, these poor people, immigrants, poor people who have come from outskirts and are working as rag pickers and are staying in the slums of Seemapuri is totally different. So that is the meaning. This can occur as a question. So I told you the meaning. Okay. So metaphorically, please remember means symbolically. Okay. And periphery means outskirts. And acquaintance, as I told you, my know-how. Okay. Or my contact. Okay. Those who live here are squatters who came from Bangladesh back in 1971. Squatters are basically illegal immigrants who just come and occupy a place, without actual permission. Those are squatters. Okay, a person who unlawfully occupies an unused land. So what happened was these people, when in Dhaka the problem came, their fields got destroyed, their homes got destroyed. So they came to Delhi, came to Seemapuri hoping to earn a living over here. So they are basically not permitted people, not allowed people. They came here illegally. Okay, they came here unlawfully, I would rather say, and they have occupied this unused land. Okay, so those who live here, those people who live in Seemapuri are basically squatters. So squatters, I told you, are kind of people who come, occupants, I could say, unlawful occupants. So unlawful occupants who came from Bangladesh, Dhaka, back in 1971. Saheb's family is among them. Seemapuri was then a wilderness. Wilderness basically means wasteland. There's nothing over there. Totally wasteland. So at that point of time, in 1971, when Saheb and his family came along with so many people from Dhaka, at that time, the place Seemapuri was a wilderness, as in there was nothing. It was totally empty. It was a wasteland. Nothing was there. Okay. So it still is, but it no longer is empty. Back then it was empty. Now so much crowd has gathered. So many people are there that there's no breathing space. So it's still a wilderness. Then also it was a wilderness, means then also it was a wasteland. Right now also it's a wasteland, but the only difference is at that point of time it was empty, it was vacant, and now it is full, it is overpopulated. In structures, this paragraph actually literally explains you the condition, the perpetual state of poverty of these dwellers of Seemapuri. Right? So just look at it. In structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin, their houses are basically kacha houses, not the proper houses that we live in. They're just temporary, shacks, we can say, or kacha kind of houses, just assembled houses, I can say. Okay, that's the best way I can describe it to you. So in structures of mud, some kind of structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin. Tin, thin tin sheets. Tarpaulin is basically, that plastic kind of a thick sheet that is put on the roof such that rain and all does not come. heavy duty waterproof plastic kind of a cloth or a sheet is basically tarpaulin, and tin are those thin sheets. Okay, so in structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin, basically, you know, assembled houses devoid of sewage. Devoid means there was no sewage facility. Drainage was not there. Of course, running water was not there. And in such condition, live 10,000 rag pickers. Just imagine. So many rag pickers actually live in such a condition, in such a state. They have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity. Just imagine the state and the condition of these people. They have lived here for more than 30 years. It's been more than 30 years. They don't have an identity. Without permits, without legal permissions from the government. They don't have any permits. They don't have any legal permission. These are basic things, you know, to have an identity proof, to have permit to live somewhere. But look here, you know, but with ration cards. Why ration cards? That get their names on voters lists, right? So they basically are given ration cards by politicians or political bodies, which actually enable their name to be there on the voter list such that they can cast their votes. Just imagine, these people are not having any kind of permits, any kind of IDs they are not having, but there's an exchange that has taken place from the government. That government has issued them ration cards so that they can get, you know, rationed food grains, and they have given them right to vote such that they can cast their votes, and you understand the whole political situation, which I must not speak. Okay, so without permits but with ration cards that get their names on voters lists and enable them to buy grain. So they can cast their votes. So, you know, there are lots of people, so they would cast their votes to a particular party and they can win with those votes. So that is the main reason why they have been given ration cards. Okay, so they have been given ration cards, and these people, they happily take the ration cards because they will get ration food and they don't have money. So look at their condition. So food. Okay. Food is more important for survival than an identity. For them, food is a major problem. So food is very important for them. Food is more important for survival than any kind of legal permits or any kind of papers. They don't want papers. They say we will not eat papers. We want food. Okay. So food is more important for survival than an identity. If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain. Say a group of women in tattered saris. Tattered means torn. Okay, tattered means torn. So say a group of women in tattered saris, when I asked them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers. Now, Anees Jung must have encountered a group of ladies sitting in tattered, worn out, torn, old clothes, old saris. So Anees Jung must have went to them and asked them, why did you leave such a beautiful, lush green Dhaka, such beautiful, lush green place, and you've ended up over here? Why? So the ladies tell Anees Jung that food is very important for us. That for getting food we have come here. Basically, food is the most important thing for us. You know, if at the end of the day we can feed our families, come whatever happens, come what may happen, if at the end of the day we and our family members do not sleep with an aching stomach here means empty stomach. If we can feed our families and give our families a happy, peaceful sleep without aching stomach. Aching stomach means you're hungry. Okay, so we without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain. So that is basically the answer to why they had come from Dhaka, because there was no work, there was no house, there was no food. So they basically come here for food. Looking for gold is just an imagery. Okay. Okay. So I asked them why they leave their beautiful land of green fields and rivers. Wherever they find food, they pitch their tents that become transit homes. Transit homes means temporary homes. So Anees is telling wherever, they get food, they get a proper life, they get some work, they, pitch their tents and start living there. They kind of live a nomadic life. Okay. Children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival. Now, they create families, children are there, they also grow in the same environment, same atmosphere. So they also become survivors. So they also, end up doing rag picking only because their parents are also doing rag picking. So they also become rag pickers. Okay. So children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival, and survival in Seemapuri means rag picking. So that is the basic work that happens in Seemapuri. So in Seemapuri, survival means you need to be a rag picker. So survival in Seemapuri means rag picking. Through the years, it has acquired the proportions of a fine art. Now, these families, their generation, these families, their kids, it's been so many years, around 30 years they are living here. They've become masters in garbage picking. So it's now, coming as an art to them. It's like an art. They've become so skilled in rag picking that it's almost become an art for them. They're totally skilled now. Okay. They have become professionals in it. Okay. So, through the years, it has acquired the proportions of a fine art. Garbage to them is gold. It is their daily bread. A roof over their heads, even if it is a leaking roof. But for a child, it is even more. Now, this is talking about parents, talking about the elders and the more mature rag pickers. So, garbage to them is gold. Why to them is gold? It is their daily bread. This is their work. They scrounge for things in the garbage, then probably they go sell it and then they buy food from it. So garbage for the parents, for the elder or the maturer types is their daily bread, a roof over their head. Even if it is a leaking roof, even if they cannot afford a proper pakka house with a pakka roof, even if it's a temporary arrangement of a tin or a tarpaulin roof, still they feel that we have something, we can get some food, we can get a, not a very beautiful house, but we can get some place to actually hide and live and survive in. So that is what they're trying to say. So basically this conveys the same idea that I told you towards the beginning of the chapter, that for adults, getting something from the garbage dumps is basically a means of livelihood, food, shelter, living, homes, clothes. This is what the elders look up to in the garbage. But for a child, it is even more. For child, it could be lots of possibilities because children, they don't have a very stable mind. They are fickle-minded. So for children, the garbage does not mean necessities. For children, garbage means luxuries like shoes, like bag and these temporary things. But for the elders, it means food, first of all, for their kids, roof for their families, shelter for their families, and clothes to cover their bodies with. I hope you understood the idea. Okay. So now, she's talking about, the kids. Finding gold in the garbage heaps for scrounging for gold means as an idea to the kids. I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note, Saheb says. His eyes lighting up. So Saheb says, in these garbage dumps, I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note. His eyes lighting up. He's very excited about that discussion because a rupee or a 10 is a big thing for him. And look at it. When you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, you don't stop scrounging. For there is hope of finding more. So now he is telling in a very excited manner that, sometimes what happens is you can find silver also. You can find a rupee note, you can find a 10 rupee note, sometimes you can find a rupee, sometimes you can find a 10 rupee note, and sometimes you can even find silver in those garbage dumps. So when you can find such things in a heap of garbage, you don't stop scrounging. For there is hope of finding more. So this is basically what looking for gold in garbage heap means for the children, for the kids. It seems that for children, garbage has a meaning different from what it means to their parents. Of course, to parents, garbage means looking for garbage, scrounging for garbage means, necessities. Necessities, the important stuff, the main things like clothes, food, shelter. And for the children of Sahib's age, okay, so for the children, basically for parents, it means survival. And for children, please don't mind my handwriting. I know it's not very good. So for children, it basically means shoes, luxuries basically. So shoes, bag, 1 rupee or a 10 rupee, or even, a silver coin. So it's like, wonder, anything can come. We can get anything luxurious. So these things would make the kids happy. So I'm just speaking up the lines for you, which you can use in your school answers. For children, the garbage dump was a means of fulfilling their dreams, although partially. While for the parents, it was survival by providing the basics, that is food, clothing and shelter. Okay, one winter morning, I see Saheb. I again, as we all know already, means Anees Jung. So, one winter morning, I see Saheb standing by the fenced gate of the neighborhood club, watching 2 young men dressed in white playing tennis. So, Anees Jung is observing Saheb one winter morning, and what she sees is that Saheb, he's standing by the fenced gate of the neighborhood club. And what is he doing over there? He's watching 2 young men, of course dressed in white because tennis clothes are in white. So, dressed in white playing tennis. I like the game, he hums, content to watch it standing behind the fence. So, he's telling Anees, I like the game, I really like the game. He hums, but content to watch it standing behind the fence. He says, I like the game, but I'm happy watching it at a distance, from a distance, I'm just happy observing the game. I have no intentions to go play the game. I'm just happy looking at the game. So, he says, I like the game. He hums, content to watch it standing behind the fence. Of course, I hope you know a fence, a boundary, something like this. Fence. Okay, so content to watch it standing behind the fence. I go inside when no one is around, he admits. So very happily, he's telling, but you know what, when nobody is around, I go inside also. I go inside this gate, I go inside the fence. When no one is around, I admit, the gatekeeper lets me use the swing. So not to play tennis, but the gatekeeper allows him to go play on the swing. So he lets me use the swing. Saheb too is wearing tennis shoes that look strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. Now see, he's a poor boy. As we all know, we've been talking repeatedly about this. So of course, his clothes are not very white. They must be pale white or colorless or non-color coordinated. They would have got, kind of, ragged clothes would be there, rags. They would have got old because of constant use and improper washing because, their state and condition. So, the white bright shoes which probably somebody would have given to him, they are looking very bright as compared to his white t-shirt and shorts. They are pale, they are not proper white, they are dirty white, they are not sparkling white because they are not clean, they are ragged, they are old, they are tattered. Okay, so Saheb too is wearing tennis shoes that look strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. So his shirt and shorts are a different white, they are discolored, overused, while his shoes probably he would have just got them, somebody would have just given it to him, or probably would have got them from the garbage. So they are sparkling white. Okay. Someone gave them to me, he says in the manner of an explanation. So he's just trying to explain, you know, that someone gave them to me. These shoes, you know, someone gave them to me. The fact that they are discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them does not bother him. So the true story is that, you know, some boy, it must have been some rich boy's shoes, and because, you know, there was a hole in one of them, so he refused to wear them. Obviously, he said, I would not wear them. So it came to Saheb. So this is the fact, okay? But this fact, the fact that they are discarded, thrown away, discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them, it does not bother him. Why? Because till now he was always walking barefoot. To a kid who's never owned a pair of shoes, a hole in a shoe would not be a major consideration. He would still be happy. You know, just imagine. So that is what they are telling. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. But the game he is watching so intently is out of his reach. So shoes, okay, he got because somebody gave it to him, you know. So he got it because some rich boy who refused and discarded it, it actually came to Saheb. But tennis is not a truth for him. That is not possibly gonna happen for him. So, but the game he's watching so intently means, you know, with so much of concentration and so much of depth and so much of love for the game, that is out of his reach. He can't play that sport. That is not possible. This morning, this is the last slide. This morning, Saheb is on his way to the milk booth. Now, you know, Saheb has become a worker in a tea stall. Okay. So, this morning, Saheb is on his way to the milk booth. He's walking towards the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. You understand a steel canister? Probably, you know, used for putting tea in it and serving to people, or probably used for carrying milk. Could possibly be either of the two. Okay, so in his hand is a steel canister. I now work in a tea stall down the road, he says. Now he's telling Anees that, Anees, look, now I work in a tea stall down the road. He says, pointing in the distance. Oh, down the road, I work in a tea stall now. Okay, and I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals. Food, you know, is so important because they hardly get food. It's so important. Okay, so I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals. Now, look at the important question. Anees is thinking, does he like the job? So she actually asks him, do you like the job that you're doing, Saheb? Do you like this work of serving tea or working in a tea stall? His face, I see, has lost the carefree look, the ease, the happiness that, you know, chops out from your face, that reflects from your face. If someone is happy, it will reflect. So she is saying, Anees is noticing him, and she is saying that his face, I see, has lost the carefree look, the easy look, the carefree look that, you know, I am my own master. Nobody tells me, dictates me what to do, you know. That she finds missing. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulder. Very important. So, of course, you know, a steel canister is heavy, but here the ideology is different. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag. Why? Because the steel canister is not his own. He's doing a job. He is working for the owner of the tea stall. So that is a responsibility. That is somebody else's business which he is working for 800 rupees and meals. Okay, he is working for this. So it's not his own thing. He has to be really very careful. He has to listen to his master. So that is the basic idea of the steel canister being heavier as compared to the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulder. Not that the plastic bag would have been physically lighter, Over here, why the plastic bag would have seemed lighter basically means that, when he was a rag picker, that was his own thing. Nobody ruled him, he was master of his own will. He used to go, he used to collect garbage. Nobody used to actually guide him. He was not doing a job under someone. He was doing it just for himself. So that's the basic ideology behind the heaviness of the steel canister and the light plastic bag, the light plastic garbage bag. Okay, he would carry over his shoulder. The bag was his. This is what she's telling. The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Saheb is no longer his own master. So that is why his face is not reflecting the happiness. Again, very important paragraph of the chapter. So I think it's quite easy. You don't need to remember anything and all answers will come very naturally to you. Just watch the video. Do watch it. Okay. Thank you. Have a nice day.